Alrighty everybody, welcome back to 3 Balls in a Puck. Now before I put the camera away today, I wanted to do another quick video on just my first quarter NFL awards, and mine being Bradley Velasquez's first quarter NFL awards. Yeah, I wanted to kind of give a shout out to the guys who have been overperforming or underperforming, I guess, and that way we can kind of see that where I am wrong absolutely already in my earlier predictions and where I'm right. One of the things that I really want to touch base on first is that this is obviously all going to change. It's only been 4 weeks, and I'll touch on a few reasons why I think it will change, but you got to give credit where credit is due. So without further ado, my first quarter NFL awards. Okay, so first off, I want to start with best quarterbacks. Now, the best quarterbacks through the first 4 games, it's really hasn't been too close. It's been Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes. Now, Jared Goff, I feel like he's made better throws, and people are going to go, "Oh, you're absolutely crazy." I feel like, especially the Thursday night game he played against Minnesota, he maybe made 3 or 4 throws that were absolutely perfect, and Minnesota's defense wasn't that bad. It just was a perfect throw. I think about the one he threw right by Kendrick's head to Todd Gurley on that opening drive. It was just absolutely beautiful. I don't think you could have handled the ball off better than the way Jared Goff threw it. Now, Patrick Mahomes, I feel, although Jared Goff has an immense amount of weapons, I feel like Patrick Mahomes has a little bit more play design, and he also has the ability to scramble. So it enables him to not, I guess, be as good as Jared Goff has been and still succeed, which we saw obviously on the Monday night. The left-handed throw he threw to Tyreek Hill, which actually hurt me in fantasy drastically, or the one where he scrambles right, and it seems like, I think they had a stat, he had 190 passing yards outside of the pocket, which was an NFL record. So yeah, those have been your 2 best quarterbacks through the first 4 games. Obviously, Todd Gurley has been absolutely fantastic, doing both catching the ball out of the backfield and obviously running the ball. But the one that surprised me the most, and I don't even know if I spelled it right, is Ezekiel Elliott. Knowing that Dak Prescott can't really even get the ball downfield, and they've been loading the box, he's still, leading the league in rushing yards. So yeah, not too much to say there. I do think this will drop off as the season progresses, and I do think Todd Gurley will begin to separate himself. And yeah, there's not much competition because everyone knows my opinion. I think the best running back in football is kind of screwing over the team he plays for, but that's best wide receivers. Julio Jones, just because he continues to seem to keep getting it done. You could have A.J. Green up here, who has had a nice resurgence. You've seen great play out of John Brown, but not on these levels. So I would say Julio Jones in Atlanta, Juju Smith-Schuster, who at the age of 21, I believe he's 21, maybe just turned 22, is just absolutely destroying the field. Now, a lot of that has to do with because Antonio Brown sees double teams like on almost every single play. But yeah, Juju Smith-Schuster. And then the one that's surprising me, I don't know why, because he's done it for a few years now, is Adam Thielen. He's kind of outshining Stephon Diggs, but this kind of goes with the same thing as Juju Smith-Schuster, is that Stephon Diggs sometimes will draw the better defensive back or maybe the better defensive coverage, which leaves Adam Thielen, the undrafted wide receiver who just runs absolutely perfect routes, and Kirk Cousins seems to be on a good page with him. His surprises, and Daniel from the channel is obviously a Tennessee Titans fan. The Tennessee Titans. They're 3-1, and you can't say they're 3-1 like the Miami 3-1, where Miami, although they did beat Tennessee, they beat up on, they beat 3 teams that aren't very good and had to come from behind and do it, and then also lose to New England. The New England game kind of got out of hand. There's some bad third down penalties by Miami, and then just some big plays here and there. And then before you know it, Miami picked off Tom Brady twice, so I wanted to have Miami up here. But I just think with all the injuries the Tennessee Titans have had and the way they've won their games, especially last week with that overtime thriller and Mike Vrabel instead of kicking a game-tying field goal, and which would have probably resulted in that game being in a tie against the Philadelphia Eagles, he just basically said, no, we're going to go for it because we play to win the game. Herm Edwards plug there. Yeah, we played to win the game, and he was able to do it. This one, I'm not too sure if I want to call it a surprise because we all know how good he was, but I didn't expect him, especially the last 2 weeks to play he has. Obviously, the week prior, he had the 3 touchdowns, which once again hurt me on my fantasy team. But yeah, Calvin Ridley has shown that he's very good at running routes. And then he's got great hands, and he constantly gets open. But once again, this could probably go up with what we're seeing with Juju Smith-Schuster and Adam Thielen, because this guy right here is taking probably the better defensive coverage. I think this is going to go up, by the way. I think he's going to get better as the year goes on, especially with Devontae Freeman probably coming back this week against Pittsburgh. Disappointments. For me personally, there's been a lot. Number one, obviously, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the whole aura of it, whatever it may be. It seems like, Mike Tomlin kind of tried to be a little too buddy-buddy at the beginning of the year, saying we're going to figure it out with James Conner, who's played quite well, but the defensive side of the ball and not addressing it during the draft and trying to replace Ryan Shazier with several defensive backs has really hurt this team. Their offense has not played that bad. I mean, against Baltimore, they didn't look like they did the previous 3 weeks. But the previous 3 weeks, they put up a substantial amount of points. They put up 30 against Tampa Bay and barely won. They put up over 30 again against Kansas City and lost. And then against Cleveland, they had multiple opportunities to make field goals and they missed it. So whether it's been Boswell or Le'Veon Bell not being there, the defense, they just need to figure it out, which leads into Antonio Brown. This is more off the field disappointment with Antonio Brown. He needs to be the guy that kind of leads that locker room with Le'Veon Bell and his whole issues going on. And instead he's been kind of throwing tantrums and saying things like, oh, my stats are down because I can't throw the ball to myself. It's not productive. It's counterintuitive to say things like that. And it kind of just undermines everything that the Pittsburgh Steelers want. Being one of the more historic franchises and one of the more conservative franchises. And then the Bills' offense, I mean, once again, hurting me in fantasy. LaShawn McCoy has just been non-existent. He's been injured. Nathan Peterman experiment 2.0 went awry in the first game, and they brought in Josh Allen. Didn't look very good. Which leads me into my next biggest disappointment is the Vikings' defense. I know they played some good teams. But they tie Green Bay on Aaron Rodgers can barely walk. They lose to Buffalo, and then the performance against the Rams was just, Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs can't play any better than they did, and yet they still lost because the defense is just giving up too many points. I know it's the Rams, but we've seen it on every level, which is I thought this was the defense. And in my prediction video, I had them winning the division because I figured them adding Kirk Cousins and the levels and the quality of players they have, whether it be on the linebackers or the defensive line or the secondary. I felt like they had quality players at every level of the defense, and it just hasn't meshed very well. But it's been 4 games. I'm sure Mike Zimmer will fees for the first quarter. This kind of lines up with the top 2, and so will the coach one as well. Jared Goff, Pat Mahomes, you can't say that they didn't. And then I threw Aaron Rodgers in there because the fact they're still winning and the guy can barely move. Obviously, we remember when he did the opening, I believe it was either opening Sunday night or opening Monday night, where he can barely move, and the Bears decided to kind of not, pressure him or play bump so he couldn't really do anything. I don't really know. Yeah, so that's MVPs. I've already talked enough about Goff and Mahomes. I would lead it to be 1, 2, 3 right now. I'm sure there's other people you can throw in there. Now, biggest surprises, if I go back to biggest surprises, one thing I wanted to have in here, and I'll just mention it really quick, is Chicago. But the only reason why I didn't put Chicago in there was because they decided to blow the game against Green Bay. So yeah, I just decided to not put it. Best coaches now. Andy Reid, Sean McVay, no surprise, right? My MVPs, my best quarterbacks are right there. Their play design has been spectacular. I would like to see Sean McVay stop celebrating. I understand, oh, he's a player's coach, he's this and that. I'd like to see him stop celebrating so damn much and just maybe be more of a authoritative at some points. I understand he's very excited, but it works now because you're winning. Let's see how that works when you start losing, a la Pete Carroll and Mike Tomlin. Andy Reid. The one thing I'd say about Andy Reid is he always looks good in the first 6 to 7 games, first half of the season. Always looks really good. It's his playoffs I'm worried about. And then also, we remember Alex Smith last year, I believe at this point, had 14 touchdowns and no picks. So, yeah, I mean, what are you going to do with Pat Mahomes if he's about on the same pace? The ones that are kind of surprised me is Adam Gase. They've had a bevy of injuries on the offensive line. Their offensive line wasn't very good as it is. But the way his offense, even in games that have been tight, he's been still able to design plays to run the ball, whether it be with Albert Wilson or even if it's that Albert Wilson pass against Oakland or whoever it is. They've seemed to win games Miami normally loses, which is why I put him there. Mike Vrabel. Going, once again, I already mentioned him going for it on a 4th down, converting 3 4th downs in overtime, gutsy calls, having to deal with losing his quarterback, having to deal with, I think they've already lost about 9 or 10 players on their team total, and then having to deal with the whole Rashard Matthews thing, and what they just basically did was just cut him. Bye, see you later. We don't need to deal with it. And at everything that's been thrown, or at every turn, everything that's been thrown, he's handled it correctly. So we'll see. It's been 4 worst coaches. John Gruden. I don't know, to be honest, if it's fair to have him here. Derek Carr threw about, I want to say 40 minutes, less than 40. No, probably about 40 to 45 minutes of the Cleveland game. Derek Carr does not look like the Derek Carr from 2 years ago, prior to the injury. I don't know if that's Gruden's fault. The only thing I would say is that at times I feel like they can get a little pass happy. We saw Marshawn Lynch finally run for over 100 and some yards. So maybe this one's not fair, but you're supposed to be an offensive-minded guy, and your offense looks horrendous. You got a favorable call in the Cleveland game, which looked like it might have been a first down. They overturned it. But, they still had to win the game after that, so... John Gruden, you're here on worst coaches for now. It's only 4 games. Mike Tomlin, same thing. Through 4 games with the teams you've played, I would expect the Steelers. I would expect them to be 3-1, if not 4-0, and instead you're 1-2-1. You tied Cleveland in a slop fest and continued to turn the ball over. Your team leads the league in penalties. You're averaging about 10 to 11 penalties per game. Although that has changed in the Baltimore game, there wasn't as many. And you have players talking about Le'Veon Bell. You have Antonio Brown's antics. You have Big Ben giving too much to the media. You never addressed the Ryan Shazier problem. Although Terrell Edmonds, the first-round pick, has looked pretty well, you're supposed to be a defensive-minded guy, and the defense has not come along. Once again, it's been 4 games. We'll see what happens. Frank Reich, you're passing the ball too damn much, man. I love Andrew Luck, but this past weekend he threw the ball over 60 times. I know people want to say, well, they don't run the ball. Well, the reason why I had Adam Gase on here is because Kenyon Drake has had an absolutely atrocious year this far, yet they're still able to get him the ball in elaborate ways, or they're still able to get, other players involved, like Albert Wilson running the ball or Kenny Stills, whereas Frank Reich, and he keeps going, well, our O-line, they're not very good and we have a lot of running back injuries. You got to find a way to keep a defense off balance, and Frank Reich has yet to do that. And then lastly, I'm going to go Matt Patricia. Not too much to say about this one, just I don't understand why these guys who coach underneath Bill Belichick keep getting jobs. That's nothing against him personally. I'm sure he's an amazing guy off the field. I'm sure he's brilliant. The one thing I did like about him is that he was originally, an offensive-minded guy, and basically, Bill Belichick said, well, you're an offensive-minded guy, go learn defense, because you're going to be able to learn defense faster because you know what the offense is going to try to bring to you. But yeah, Matt Patricia, and let this be a message to anyone in the NFL if they happen to come across this video, which I highly doubt they will. Stop hiring Bill Belichick's disciples. And that could, you know what, that'll be the next video I do. The record of Bill Belichick's disciples. Because it's terrible, and they never learn their lesson. Oh, New England's 13-3, and they went to the Super Bowl again. Let's hire all their assistants. No, maybe it's just Belichick. Maybe there's a little cheating involved too. Who knows? Maybe they're past the cheating days. I don't really want to get into it. But yeah, that's my worst coaches thus far. So this has been my first quarter NFL awards. I didn't want to just limit it to one person because the offense has been outstanding so far through 4 games of the NFL season. Can't wait for more NFL to come. Sundays are just absolutely so much fun. The whole channel gets together, and we all watch the videos together, and we all watch football together, and we're all in the same fantasy league, and my fantasy league is doing terrible. And yeah, if you like this video, if you just happen to stumble across it, if you'd like to hit the like button, and feel free and do so. If you want to subscribe so you can see more content like this, with me rambling about how bad Patriot assistant coaches are, then subscribe. If you dislike the video, hit the dislike button and tell me how much I suck and where I need to get better. And yeah, this has been another episode of 3 Balls and a Puck. I've been Bradley Velasquez, and you have been great. Thanks for watching.